Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have one conference final beginning tonight, another one beginning tomorrow. We'll make our predictions. No wagering. But that's always a good thing. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about Jimmy Butler. He's an interesting character because the Sixers had him a few years ago, and he wanted to go there. He wanted to play with Joel Embiid, and he did. And then I don't know, something went wrong at the end. They didn't do well in the playoffs, and all of a sudden Jimmy Butler's gone. He goes to Miami, and now Miami's like his game has gotten better. Jimmy Butler's, and as much as I watch, but clearly his game has gotten better, or he's at least seems to be more assertive. Either way, you do kind of wonder what went wrong with the Sixers. And, I know Anthony had said this, and so there's this thought now in Philly where maybe at some point Embiid's going to go and join him now and leave Philly. And if I were Philly, I'd worry about that. But I only bring this up because Butler has always talked about Embiid. He has done it all season. He said he should be the MVP, almost as if he's courting him. And again, all Philly had to do was pay Butler, and I think he'd have stayed. So you do wonder, that could have changed the whole course of where they're going and where they're heading.
I can't remember whether it had something to do with Ben Simmons or not.
It may have.
Yeah. All I know is that Philadelphia seems to be on the verge of an implosion because, they fire Doc Rivers and Embiid may want out. I've heard I didn't hear about the Miami stuff. I did hear about connection with the Knicks because apparently his representation used to be Worldwide West or whoever the part of the management of the Knicks is. He had some connection to them, and the Knicks have been looking for a signature player for a couple years. They struck out. If they don't get Giannis, they'll get him or somebody else. So.
That's the other rumor now. Just heard on the radio, so who knows if it's true that actually Doc Rivers could go to Milwaukee as his next job.
Wow. Yeah,
it's a weird league, man.
I mean, honestly, you complain about the NHL recycling coaches. The NBA is a friggin' joke. Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, Doc Rivers.
Doc Rivers hasn't been without a job since like 1999, I heard.
Yeah, stop the music, and whoever's left, misses out on the chair. It's like it's pathetic. So, So I'm a Celtics fan, so I saw that they were leading after the half, and they ended up losing. I hope they get to the final. But my main desire is that LeBron doesn't win another one. So I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan right now.
So which desire is more, the Celtics to win or LeBron not to win?
Celtics to win.
Okay, I'm just checking your mental.
I mean, the best.
That's Mike's getting dangerously close to that tipping point, Russ. But
I think
the best thing would be for the Celtics to beat the Lakers, but I would rather just rule out the Lakers having even a chance to win and Denver pile driving them into the dust. So, I hate LeBron. He's a good guy, but I hate him as a player. I hate how he's been promoted so much over the years. He's not Jordan.
Not worth it.
What has he lost? 4 NBA titles.
He's been the 4 NBA. He's been there.
Jordan was not on my team, but I respected him and thought he was fantastic. But I never of course, LeBron, like Shaq, forces his way to LA, so they can have a fat old Jack Nicholson watch them lose. Anyway.
Now you're picking on Jack Nicholson. He just came out of retirement to show up at games again.
Oh, he looked so bad too. My God.
Oh, let's see what you look like when you're 80.
I'll be dead.
All right, then you won't look so good.
Oh my goodness!
All
right, here we go. I'll try. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, May 18th, 2023.
I'm the late Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm confused.
I know, it's not impossible.
I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that welcomes you to the second round of the playoffs today. And,
no.
Third round of the playoffs today. And thank you. I didn't get the date
So
right, but
close.
I got the date right, but the
Close.
round wrong. So close.
Yeah, so let's talk about something else that's dead, and that's hockey in Arizona.
Yeah, we can get. Let's start there. I guess
please.
We have to. It's a big story.
we have to. It's a very big story. Obviously, I wrote about it today too. Well, all right. Well, who wants to start this one?
I'll start it off because
Go ahead, Russ.
I had said a while back that I didn't think the vote would pass, and I had mentioned 2 or 3 times doing research why I didn't think. Okay, so it didn't pass. What I didn't realize is that the NHL really didn't have a rock solid plan if the vote didn't pass as a quick measure. so they didn't, right? And what we didn't hear last year is we kept hearing, and I didn't know this either. We kept hearing, hey, this place is going to be an intimate experience, and fans are going to love it, and everything else. But we never really heard the opinion of the players. Well, now I think we have inadvertently through Clayton Keller's dad's burner account or Twitter account. And, I don't blame them. It seems like they all were basically hinging on the same thing the NHL was, that this would pass. And they'll put up with it for another year or two, but that's it. And now they don't want to put up with it anymore. A bunch of
Well, this is the thing. When we heard yesterday, when it came out that the Morello Gutierrez group, that the Coyotes ownership had put in a whole $250,000 to sort of as a get out the vote campaign, and that was bounced back by the unions who were not for this project in Tempe, putting up $2 million. The landscape was not read right. I mean, the organization thought it was a fait accompli. Gary Bettman was on Bob McCown's podcast and was, extolling the virtues of hockey in Phoenix because there's a big fan base, and Austin Matthews was there and went to a Phoenix Coyotes game as a 5-year-old. I mean, all this happy horse shit. Honestly, it's been 20 years of fumbling about in Phoenix. And I was telling Russ this before, Ak. So they were in the America West Arena with the Phoenix Suns back in the 90s during the Kachuk Roenick days, and they were successful, but they weren't. They were tenants. They weren't making enough money, and they wanted to try to build a building. They wanted to build it in
Scottsdale. More money than they are now.
Well, let me finish. They wanted to build a building in Scottsdale. Scottsdale didn't want to build a building, so the whole Glendale thing happened. It was too good to be true. They couldn't get people to come there because most of the people who want to go see Coyotes games are either in Phoenix or in Scottsdale. So we go through all this stuff. After 20 some odd years, and Redfield T. Baum and Jim Balsley and lawsuits and everything, and now Mullet Arena, and this thing with Tempe fails. And what is the Hail Mary? Going back to the friggin' America West building. Just move this franchise out of there. It's a joke.
All right. Well, first off, Mike, I'm not like completely going to disagree with you on that. Obviously, what's happened here has been ridiculous, right? And then they probably do need to be moved. It is unfortunate. I mean, this is not. I mean, calling it not a hockey market, like everyone's like, oh, hockey in the desert, Arizona doesn't work. That's just ridiculous. I mean, honestly, they haven't been able to do anything. They haven't been able to get any traction to where they really even live. They put the thing in the wrong place. You're right about all that. I mean, you can sit back and you say, is Tampa Bay a hockey market? No, it's not a hockey market.
No, but they benefited from a good organization and
a good organization in a good arena, right in the right place. Nashville, same thing. That's not a hockey market. Carolina's not a hockey market. None of these are hockey markets. So like Arizona's no different than that. It's just that, just because they're in the desert, quote unquote, and if you've ever been to,
I agree with that.
Yeah, no,
I've never been to those places. They're no different than walking around any suburban place.
And there is a fan base, not as much as Gary Bettman is saying that there is, but there is a fan base. But they have not been able.
There's 8 million people, 9 million people, or whatever, right?
And that's the thing. It's a top 10 TV market, and I understand why the NHL would stay there, but they have not been able to put the fan base and the building and ownership all together. And that's been 20 years of that. So
the frustration of this, Mike, is it's been 20 years of that. And here's the thing, right? Like Atlanta is another good sport. Technically not a good sports market. I don't want to get into that. We talked about that. I know you don't think so, but it's another good market with a lot of people.
Yeah.
They've bailed out of it twice quickly, and they took this on for 2 decades, right? So like, the reality is that is a weird. There's the market of Atlanta. I think it's about the same number of people, maybe more. But
I think Phoenix is bigger. Houston's bigger than Phoenix. I'll check.
Yeah.
I'll check television
no,
markets.
but Atlanta. I'm talking about Atlanta. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think Atlanta's smaller TV wise than Houston. I'll check.
Maybe so. Yeah, to sit back and say the NHL didn't have a plan, Russ. Sometimes that's the plan. And here's why I say that.
That's not good enough.
No, here's why I say that.
Okay.
Atlanta's 6th. Houston is 7th.
Okay.
Phoenix is 11th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Atlanta's bigger than all of them. All right. So, and they bailed out of there twice, quickly. I mean, relatively quickly and easily, actually.
Because of lack of support and bad ownership. I mean, we talked about it yesterday.
They had arenas. And the Atlanta Arena is right downtown. It's a good place.
Well, but here's the question. Somebody in the chat might know this. They played at Phillips Arena. And that wasn't that long ago. It was 11, 12 years ago. Now they're talking about building a new building for a potential. So what the hell happened?
Phillips Arena predates them. It's not a young arena. Like it's like
all right.
That's where the Atlanta Hawks have played forever. So like that's the reality is like. But I was there and it wasn't like a modern building. Like I went there for the All-Star game. It wasn't a modern building.
But it wasn't bad. I mean, I played on the ice and I
played there too. I think I played on the ice there. I might have. Maybe I didn't play there.
You were there for that.
I was there. That was Carolina. Maybe I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Carolina. You were there.
All right. So but here's the thing: the NHL has forever backed this. It's become a pet project of Bettman's for sure. It's become something that everybody has decided we're gonna get behind this, and therefore they've promised people that they would always stand behind them. They promised that there are people involved in this whole thing at a deep level that always were always felt the NHL would stand behind them. The only way to get out of that sometimes is, and I think that this is the plan. The NHL is like, well, we're going to be behind you just because that thing's going to pass. That's going to be great. That thing's going to pass. And I think that maybe Russ, they might have known it wasn't going to pass, but
no, they didn't know that. I met with somebody from
but I mean.
2 weeks ago,
if you knew it wasn't going to pass, and a lot of other people thought it wasn't going to pass.
Yeah, but Russ is ahead of the trend.
You don't think that? Yeah, you don't think they had people in there telling them that it wasn't going to pass, but yet they always stuck with it. They always said, "We're going to be there for you when this passes. We'll be there. We'll make this happen when it passes. When it passes. When it passes." It hasn't passed.
They may have had one or two, but like I said, I met with somebody pretty high-ranking official who was saying they thought it would pass, gave me the reasons why, and I disagreed.
Yeah, but I think that was the message the message to all of us, and I heard the same thing that they thought it was going to pass, but the message was always it's going to pass, and since it's going to pass, we're going to help them out. So try to follow that.
That's true, but for every plan you have as a big business, especially a league, you have to have that bailout backup plan, and they didn't. So now this is a real mess because maybe the league didn't know to what extent the players weren't unhappy. I understand that. That's not on them. But they have to know to what level the owners are unhappy with getting piddly revenue from the Mullet Arena.
And the players
do that again. And now you have to find a spot that might take another year. And you're hoping now that you won't be in Mullet Arena next 2 years from now.
Well, okay. So say the Hail Mary is this, America West with
which I did bring up once.
With Ishbia, the owner of the Phoenix Suns. They just spent apparently millions of dollars to refit the America West for basketball. They would have to. I heard they would have to spend $100 million to refit it for hockey.
Bring it back around. Yeah.
Right. They're not going to do that.
I don't think that's the plan. I don't think that's the plan at all. I think
that's what they're saying the plan is, because if that's not the plan, then there is no plan. Because
I did bring it up 2 days ago. Remember, Mike, before even Dreger said it, that they might try and go back to that place. And it's funny because, like, I've never been in that place. And I was on a show where, the host is like, well, my grandmother used to go to games there. And I said, why'd she stop? Like, I'm blaming his grandmother,
Yeah,
but he did say that when he would sit in the seats, he talked about what Mike was saying to me this morning, that there were some bad views.
Yeah, you can't see the net. Yeah. You can't see the net on one side.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that here's the thing, like I said, again, trying to understand what I'm saying here, that sometimes the plan is not to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan and you don't have a way out of it, then, and I can't say this directly, but I'm trying to say it in a roundabout way. Then you have the ability to go someplace else, and then you have the ability to make the move quickly.
This is the franchise manipulation version of the phrase "burn your boats," because once you burn your boats, you have no choice other than to make do with what you have. But the problem is that all you're going to do is starve to death in Arizona, because you can't go back to Gila River Arena. They're going to stay in Mullet Arena for one more year, and then you're going to have to come up with a plan. So if they can't,
they have that one more year. But even if they do that, it's going to be a problem. There's two things here that you have to remember. Like, there's like, why the question is going to be asked why they failed, right? And when you ask why they failed, the NHL, by doing what they've said, by doing what they've done the entire way, can never take the blame for this. And
sure they can. And Kevin made this point yesterday, Ak. He said that the NHL, ever since, and maybe the Arizona situation back in the 90s was the reason why, the NHL, when at all possible, never want to be the second tenant in a building. They want to be the primary tenant,
right? Which they're not going to be in any of these.
They're not going to be the primary tenant at America West. So that is an untenable. They're just going back to what the failure was 25 years ago.
But they're not the primary tenant in the MSG or at the Barclays.
Sure, but it's the same ownership. That's the thing.
Right. There is something interesting, though. The chat room brought this to my attention. So the other night, I was on a broadcast with Pat Mahomes Sr. He pitched for the Mets, and it's on a thing that I work with, KinersCorner.com. And we talked about a lot of different things. But one thing he mentioned in passing is that, yes, his son is a minority owner in the Kansas City Royals. And Pat Mahomes, the quarterback, did tweet yesterday he'd like to see them go to Kansas City. And my guess is he either has a piece of that arena or they're going to try and start a group to maybe get them. And so I said it didn't seem like a good idea. If he can get people energized, maybe you have to relook at it.
I know for a fact, Russ, because they've talked about Kansas City for years. That arena is owned by the Anschutz Group, who owns the LA.
It's a fully hockey operational arena.
Right. But it's not a new arena, of course.
Not a new arena, but Quebec City has a new arena, and
right. But again, Kansas City they would stay in the Western Conference. We know Quebec, they would have to move to the East, and then it would be imbalanced. Go back. I do think, though, that what has happened over the last 48 hours and what is different now than opposed to before, Clayton Keller's dad stepped out of line, it pulled the tweet down, but there is discontent here, not only with the other owners, that this situation has gone on long enough, but with players and with the PA. Especially with hockey-related revenue. This is a suck on revenue.
But I also think, Mike, that discontent stretches to the NHL itself. To the NHL,
the owners.
To the NHL itself, to Gary Bettman, to the whole 9 yards. There is nobody happy about what's happening here, or at least pretending not to be happy, unless the plan was, listen, we can always say it failed because they didn't approve a new arena, and they didn't approve a new arena. That's why it failed. And if that's the case, then they can move them right away, and no one's going to say that they failed because it's not their fault. The people there didn't vote for a new arena. That I think is the plan. Well, I really think that's the plan.
I'd say it's 95% they're going to move after next year. Yeah. Now, they use the excuse that with scheduling, say, for example, Salt Lake City, the building that they would be in the owner of the Utah Jazz. They would move to Utah, but they wouldn't be able to schedule because the Jazz are there. Same thing with Houston with the Rockets. Same thing with Sacramento.
I don't know about
all these potential options. There's NBA teams. Kansas City is the one where there's not. They could move them
Kansas
right
City's
now.
Got a lot of space, and Quebec has a lot of space too. And I know you sit there,
but they don't want to move to Quebec. Unfortunately, they don't want to move.
It's not. I asked this question specifically to somebody yesterday at the league, and I said, "Is the reason you wouldn't move them to Quebec the fact that you don't want to unbalance the conferences?" I asked them that question right away because I'm like, that's what everybody would think right away. And they said, honestly, that has nothing to do with it at all. They said because we'll make that work. We'll figure out a way, even if we have two extra teams in the East and 2. They said we'll make that happen because that's not the problem here. That's just something.
Yeah, the Canadian dollar is a big problem.
They could move another franchise like Nashville to the East and then expand 2 and go 34 teams. They could do that.
There's a bunch of things they could do.
I don't think we're looking at this right now. long term, we're looking at this right. They need a short term place now.
Yes,
that's the issue. We're not looking at it,
and that's
where Kansas City could come in,
and that could be Quebec. Even could be Quebec. Remember, Winnipeg played in the Eastern Conference.
They played in the Southeast Division, right?
They played in the Southeast Division, which everyone was like, "That's insane," right? But that was a short-term fix because they had no other options at the time. So,
but I do think though that with Marty Walsh, the new head of the PA, and the clear discontent from some of the players of the going back for another year in this bandbox college arena. I don't care how nice they did it up. It's an embarrassment to this league that they're playing in a 3,500 seater. You know, it was one thing to play in the Calgary Corral back in the day or whatever. They were building the Saddle Dome, you know, temporary things. But this is a temporary thing to nowhere. This is a disaster. Just get them the hell out of there.
I just want to say this, and I noticed that Bill Daly was careful with his wording because he said, I can't see them playing anywhere else but Mullet Arena next year. But that's still, it wasn't 100%.
Oh yeah,
100% statement, and I mentioned that even on the show. But the thing about it is, you think about this and you're like, what if Keller and like two other players who would be getting paid well, like Krause and whatever, hold out at the start of next year, and it starts getting around. It's going to start getting around in the press anyhow, and it's going to be a bad look for this league. And eventually these players will talk about it. They're not going to be able to be muzzled about it. And again, Clayton Keller has got enough money. Like, people think, well, he's making plenty of money, he should just show up. But he's got enough money that he doesn't have to show up either. Right. That's the whole thing. And even a guy like Krause doesn't live high on the hog. He might decide that holding out is better than going back to that place. You get two or three of them like that, Eck, that does cause a big problem.
Oh yeah, for sure. It really does. There's no question about it. And there has been even talk that I even mentioned in my blog today. There's been discussion about just dissolving them, like dissolving this team, and having a draft where the players are drafted back into the other. And that's happened before too in the NHL. So it's not like,
we talked about retraction yesterday and how unlikely it always is. I agree with you that it's a good solution. I don't think it's a great solution, but I think it's a good solution because I do think at some point you have to look at it and say, okay, we're losing money. What is the point of having another season there? And if you do just spread the wealth as far as the players, at least owners won't have that drain anymore.
Right. They won't have that drain. And you can go back to like 31 teams. They did it for a couple of years, while we're waiting for Seattle to come around and everything like that. So that 31 teams is not impossible to pull off. It's not ideal, but it might be more ideal than it also might be ideal monetarily too, because they can get more money from an expansion team than they can from a moving a team.
Well, you're talking about buying out the current owners because they can't simply dissolve the team and say, oh, you're out $500 million.
No,
they reimburse them for what they paid or give them something extra, and then a year or two down the road they flip that and get another expansion franchise for $900 million.
Right, exactly, and that's
one thing that does screw up though, Eck, is now the franchise's best player, Logan Cooley, isn't showing up in Arizona this year. I'm pretty sure he's going back to college, where I think he wanted to play in the NHL, but now he's, they're going to look at the landscape and say, no, don't do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this someone brought this up. This is an interesting question, but we'll address this because this is an interesting one here. So can an NHL negotiate with the new owners, for example? Let me put that back up.
Oh, sorry.
Can the NHL negotiate with new owners? For example, NHL will give you 50% more royalties for the next 10 years if you buy this team.
No, they won't cut a separate deal. But if these ownership groups that are interested in the Ottawa Senators don't end up getting that franchise, maybe they'd be interested in Arizona. But you got to remember, Ottawa is a team that is on the cusp of being really good with a lot of good young players. Yeah. And this is an organization that's been strip mined. Or, it's like, so, they've got Cooley, they've got a few Dylan Gunther and a few other prospects but they've been, they've really ripped this franchise asunder, and they really have to build it up again. And, the funny thing is, what if they do this? What happens to the players who are under contract to that organization? Do they become unrestricted free agents? Do they go back in the draft like Gunther and no,
I think they have a special dispersal draft.
Dispersal draft. Yeah. Okay.
I think their contracts go with them,
Right. Yeah, the contract
and the salary cap would have to be adjusted a little bit because like they would
probably have to add a couple million to the cap this year, simply because every team's going to get a player, and
so it would make it interesting because you have certain guys like certain teams who couldn't maybe even if they gave the cap up $5 million in a situation like there's something like that, you're still not. That's not going to cover all the players, and teams are right up against the salary cap. It's not going to help them very much.
True, but they'll come up with a solution for that. I mean, like you said, a temporary cap thing where maybe it is $5 million. But
or maybe the Arizona players don't count against the cap or something
exemption
while they're under their current contracts
for a certain number of years. Say,
maybe under their current contract.
What they have to prevent, and this will be like up to the agents and otherwise, what they have to prevent is a wildcat strike, because if they do have a wildcat strike, everybody loses in that one. The players lose money eventually because they're not going to get paid if they're not showing up. The owners are not going to make any money if they're not showing up.
Right.
But
the PA loses because they can't control their players.
Right, but it could happen. Like it could, if they have a majority and they say we're not playing this year, that's a big problem. Like that's a problem where then the NHL has to do one of two things, like you said. They either have to dissolve or they have to find a temporary residence ASAP, like in the next 120 days.
Right. Which is, it seems impossible, but it's not. I've told it.
It's not impossible. I brought it up yesterday. They did it last time, and it definitely can be done again, but I guess it can't be done at a very popular place because of all the things they might have booked there. So this is where it's going to be in a less popular place.
It must be done.
I even was told by one person that they would possibly share the Vegas arena for a year. That's another thing. That's something
that's not the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not.
At least it's an NHL arena. At least
NHL arena. It doesn't have a basketball team in it. It's got So there are lots of events there for sure. But
because we have to remember, like the practice rink conditions is an actual regular rink with just like a corded curtain. Yeah. And players don't like that. So that's one thing. I know that the home locker room was pretty good. I don't remember seeing the visitor locker room with that.
The visitor locker room is basically an open floor with those black divider sheets.
No, I thought that was the practice rink. I don't think that was the regular rink.
I think
that was the regular rink too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Been there yet.
Yeah, and so if that's the case, Zach, that's the other thing is like teams are eventually going to say something about it too. Last year they were on good behavior, but they're eventually going to say something about it too because they're not going to want to play in that either.
No. I mean, it's going to be taking up a lot of our time this summer for sure.
It is. There's no doubt about it.
I can feel that already. It's going to be something that's going to be what now type stuff.
Wonderful.
And there's going to be, and I know it's not something people love to talk about, so we'll try to keep it to a minimum.
Can we say one thing? Can we say that it's very fortunate that the Arizona Coyotes did not win the lottery and pick Connor Bedard, because had they done this and this thing happened, and I think it still would have happened, then you'd have the first pick overall and a potential next superstar in this league going nowhere. And that would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's true. All right. So let's get into, I don't want to I haven't talked to you guys since Edmonton was limited. I don't even want to go down that road again. I'm tired.
Let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers.
I want to do that, Mike, right now because I've already made my statements about it, and I'm taking a lot of heat about it. I was on Edmonton radio about it. I've been all over the place about it. How I thought it was like the worst coaching job I've ever seen done in the history of the NHL. In the history of the NHL playoffs, honestly, it was the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. And how they may have ruined a potentially great young goalie. So, but that's besides that, point. We'll just move on. But let's move on to Carolina and Florida because it starts tonight. And how this is not exactly a sexy Final Four. Let's throw that out there right away.
Well, I mean, on the surface, sure.
It was okay. It was the Final Four in the West that I predicted. I predicted Vegas, Dallas.
Right, and Vegas is always going to be. Vegas is still a sexy team, but Dallas has never really been a sexy team.
But the East, and I'll mind my friend mind my French here. The East has been a cluster F. It's been a complete disaster because, the best team in the East lost to Florida in the first round. The second best team in the East, in my estimation, the New York Rangers, lost to the Devils. When that happened, I thought the team that had the path to win the East was Toronto, and they choked on the bone.
You predicted them to lose that series
against the Panthers.
Yeah.
As I suspected that they would.
You said anyway.
I went 4-0 in the conference final, Zach.
I know you did.
You should have bet me on FanDuel. A slow clap. Thank you. Your waiters. But yeah. So I mean, I look at Carolina and Florida, and it's not sexy, but I mean, Florida deserves to be where they are. I think Carolina is at a fairly easy path. The Islanders can't score, and the Devils did not have a ton of experience and did not have great goaltending.
Yeah, but they haven't played anything like Florida yet.
Yeah, they're full marks for getting there. So I think this is going to be an interesting series. I don't think it's going to be particularly easy. I did pick Carolina in 6. We can go. No, but here's the only thing I want to get your impressions on this. Bob has got to be the Bob of the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
For Florida to have a chance. And I don't know whether Bob is young enough to be that Bob through 3 rounds.
How old do you think Bob is?
He's 32, but I mean, Russ, all they talk
Bob
about
is in such incredible shape, Mike. It's like, the guy is a workout fiend. Like he is
10 to 15 pounds a game.
All they talked about during the Boston series and in some points during the Toronto series is that Bob, the way he plays was so physically taxing that he would potentially wear down.
Who was they? Who was saying it?
Commentators on Sportsnet on
he's had a good time off now. Like they
were wrong, and that's a big key. What Ek just said. He's had time off.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if time off helps the Florida Panthers or not. To be honest, it's one of those things, No,
I think it helps Bob. I don't know. Maybe he'll even be a smidge rusty as far as timing.
Yeah.
I think it does help him as far as, not getting injured and playing at his best. And look, Turavainen's coming back from a broken hand. How actually effective is he going to be?
Yeah.
Finger.
That's a big one.
They said broken hand in the Observer.
Oh, hand? Okay. Yeah. Well, that's different. Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, and that's tough. I mean, I don't know. The reality is the Panthers have had all kinds of trouble over the last several years playing Carolina. That's the team they play worst out of anybody.
Not with this team right now.
I know that I'm not, and I agree, Russ, because they also had all kinds of trouble in the regular season playing Toronto over the last several years. Like Toronto has owned Florida as well. So the reality is like this
regular season. You just
Toronto's
right.
It doesn't much matter.
Yeah, and this is definitely a Florida team with a Kachuk, and Destiny, and all that stuff. They're going. They got a lot going on here. This is going to be.
Yeah, they're getting. Look, this is the best I've seen Duclair play since like a year ago.
Sam Bennett.
Bennett has a couple of games was the best player on the ice.
Reinhart.
Kachuk definitely got into the Leafs' head, and he's able to do that against any team. He seems to be able to spread his madness to them to the point where they get off their game.
Yeah.
Not completely, but enough to get moments. And then I'm going, and it's, and I get it. They have a tenacious forecheck. They have the best defense. Those things are all true. They still have Freddie Anderson in net. And if it gets to a game 7, I'm betting on Bob. I'm not betting on Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, no, I do think that's sort of the great equalizer. I mean, Florida, they attacked you with not only Bennett and Reinhart, and Barkov got sick in the first round and was much better against Toronto and helped shut down Matthews or Tavares. They didn't score a goal in the series. Verhaeghe and Duclair. What I think is going to be the key to this series is Carolina forechecking a defense again. And I keep saying this, and they didn't play weak against Toronto, but Toronto really didn't have that great of a forecheck. I think the Florida defense is their Achilles heel. After Ekblad and Montour, I don't think Gustav Forsling is good. Radko Gudas is slow.
Forsling is good. Gudas is very serviceable.
I'm not saying he's not serviceable. He's physical. He's he's intimidating.
He's not the fastest guy in the world, but people hate to skate down near him. He's going to hit people.
Talk about a moment. There was a moment. Did you see the picture with him and Joseph Wall?
Yes,
that's what Radko Gudas is good at, Mike.
They gave him all kinds of heat about that on Hockey Night in Canada as like
because he's an asshole.
Thing. Yeah,
but that's what he is.
Yeah, that's okay. That's not a bad thing. He's an intimidative defenseman, and you need guys like that. I'm just saying he's playing a little too high in their lineup. I mean,
Ekblad is making up for the lack of defense on that team. He's playing like Aaron Ekblad again, offensively and defensively.
Josh Mahura, their defense, Josh Mahura and Mark Stuff, their defense is not particularly strong. It's good. It was good enough to get by Boston. It was good enough to get by Toronto. I don't know.
Two very good teams offensively. I mean, Boston, Toronto, to sit back and say their defense is strong is good enough to get by Boston, good enough to get past
their defense,
good enough to get past Arizona, and good enough to get past Chicago.
I know their defense is not particularly strong. They got great goaltending against Toronto. Their defense was, if Toronto would have cashed in on their opportunities, they would have won the series. They simply did not.
Yeah, ifs and buts were candy enough.
I know. Yeah, I admit that, Russ. I'm just saying.
I agree that Toronto, that Florida got really lucky in the series against Toronto. I think
they got lucky. I think
I think they did. I think they did get lucky in a couple games. I think that they did, but I think at the same time,
sometimes you have to have luck.
You have to have luck, and I still think they probably would have looking at it.
Wasn't for bad
won
luck.
The series, even if they weren't. It might not have been 5 games, but they got lucky to make it in 5.
If it wasn't for bad luck, they'd have no luck at all.
Well, there you go. But I think that what people look at the Florida no names on defense, and it's easy to sit back and say that, but the reality is they've taken on 2 really good offensive teams, and the other reality is that they're 2 good forechecking teams. I don't care. You can sit there and say Toronto didn't get their forecheck going, but Toronto has a good forecheck, and Boston didn't get their forecheck going, and Boston has a good forecheck. The reality is what they do well, Florida, is they move the puck so fast that teams don't get their forecheck, and that's where they don't allow teams to get a forecheck going very, very often, and that's been their key. And plus, teams are a little bit afraid to pinch against them because they're a really good counterattack team. So when your forecheck depends on the defenseman pinching all the time. That's a big part of the forecheck. How many times you see that happen? Wraps around. It's the defenseman pinching that keeps the forecheck alive. If the defense is not pinching and it's just 3 guys up front or 2 guys up front, if they're keeping a guy high, 2 guys up front trying to get the puck away from the Panthers, it's not going to happen. You got to take chances. You got to pinch your defenseman, and when you do that, the Panthers end up with 2-1s, and that's how they were beaten. That's how they beat Boston up. So the reality is,
look, even Las Vegas, the gambling part of it is dissing the Panthers. Like they're the 3rd best Cup team right now. Everybody is latched on to Vegas. They've all latched on to Vegas.
All latched on to Vegas, yeah. It's ironic because they were been like after the game after everybody played 2 games last year, Florida was the favorite to win the Cup.
I know.
But that's just whatever. Who knows? I mean, I don't think there's a favorite to win the Cup of these 4 teams.
No, I don't think so either.
I wouldn't sit there and say that.
My personal belief is that the Cup winner is coming out of the West. Whoever wins the West is going to win. But
what I think is funny about that, Ek, is we all said at the beginning of the year that his Cup was coming out of the East.
Well, right, because the East was decapitated in the first 2 rounds, Russ.
Yeah, I know.
That's why. It's like, and I'm not taking anything away from Carolina, but this is not the Carolina with now Teravainen's back, but not at 100%, with Svechnikov, with a solid goaltender. This is Freddie Anderson or Antti Ranta, and I'm waiting when they're going to go to Kyochikov. Without Svechnikov and without Pacioretty, now they've, is Jordan Martinook gonna continue to lead them in scoring? I don't know.
No, but I'm gonna get down like this. I'm gonna say that Florida is King Kong and Carolina is Godzilla, and I would take King Kong over Godzilla every day of the week.
Does that mean that Arizona is Mothra?
Mothra. It could be even someone lesser than Mothra because I like Mothra.
I mean, here's the thing about the series: like whether you're predicting, I predicted Florida to lose both of their first 2 rounds. Okay, clearly I have, and I like Florida. I pull for them, but but I'm starting to they're starting to win me over here that they can do this because I've watched them beat up on they've won what? How many they've won? 7 out of 8 games.
They won in terms of games in a row.
Yeah, they lost one game to Toronto, been there, but they won 7 out of 8 games.
They won 6 in a row until they lost game 4, and then so they've won 7 of the last 8.
Right, 7 of the last 8 games
against a ton of confidence
against 2 of the best teams in the league, and it's just like when you look at that, it's just really it's hard to say that they're going to falter against Carolina. I mean, they really just their confidence level is crazy high, and you're starting to see the third and fourth liners and things like that start to come through with big plays, and that's when usually what are you saying, Russ? No,
I'm saying no to Godzilla, to Jeffrey size. King Kong would throw Godzilla right into the ocean. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean lizards versus mammals. It's not mammals usually take over pretty well. So the reality is, so I asked my son about this because I always do about this prediction, because this is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Vegas is Rodan.
The Carolina Hurricanes versus the Florida Panthers. There's a really great documentary on right now on Disney Plus called Path of the Panther. We know the people who've done it. It's a story.
Yeah.
It's a story of the extinction of the saving of the actual animal, the Florida Panther. Which,
the race, yeah.
It does exist down there, and it's really a great documentary. And in it talks about very specifically, how Panthers have survived against hurricanes in Florida over these years, and what they do, and how they survive. Where they hide, and how they manage to do this. So we've seen that Panthers can survive against hurricanes. So
they find stray computers in the wilderness.
The Panthers are going to do this. So he thinks the Panthers win this as far as the mascot battle goes.
And I know everybody loves Brind'Amour. We all love Brind'Amour as a coach, but we have to give credit to Paul Maurice. He has played this really well.
Yes. And remember, Maurice was one of Brind'Amour's mentors too.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about mentor act because they Jeff Merrick sort of sneaked an interview with Brind'Amour where he talked about Maurice, and Maurice was the coach that basically slowly weaned ice time away from him at the end of his career, and he says, we get along, but didn't sound exactly.
I mean that, but Mom, that is the issue with Paul Maurice in general. Like there are a lot of people who don't like Paul Maurice.
Right.
There's a lot of people out there that'll tell you that because he can.
Brind'Amour has quite an ego, Mike. I think we have to, as a player, especially.
Sure.
Yeah, I know, but there's no question. I mean, and I'm not, I'm not shocked. I just think they both are similar coaches, though, the way they coach. They both coach in very similar ways.
I think Maurice right now in these playoffs has been winning the mental battle with the referees and everything else. They're not calling anything for our guys. Maurice has played it looser than I've ever seen him do it. So I think that his taking time off to reset from Winnipeg has been good.
I think you're right about that. And I think the Florida media suits him better than the Winnipeg media.
There is no media.
Right. So I think that suits him better than the Winnipeg media. And, that I think is also plays into
me and my brother, that's the Florida media. There you go.
So he's like, that's the thing. So he's out there and, I think he has done a good job. I think he's outcoached both the coaches in the first 2 rounds, clearly. And that's not.
It's easy to outcoach somebody when you have the best goaltender.
Well, there's no question that the best goaltender comes into play, but remember
show me a good goaltender, and
but the whole thing is you can't use that logic because we've been killing Bob for a year and a half.
He's been phenomenal. He's been phenomenal, Russ.
He was phenomenal against Toronto. He was great against Boston, but not phenomenal.
Late in the season, I mean, if he doesn't make that save against Marchand in Game 5, then it's over.
Right. And if there's 3 more seconds on the clock, he probably doesn't make that save because Marchand doesn't have to take the shot from way out there. Like that was a great save, but it wasn't a hard save to make if you knew where the clock was because he could charge out on the angle there, which is what he did, and take that no problem.
I'm just going to answer official nickel grunge, city grunge. Vasilevsky's on the golf course, so whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, my prediction for this one. So you said yours is Carolina in 6, Mike?
Carolina in 6.
Russ, what's yours?
Florida in 7.
That doesn't know where to go now.
No, I didn't know. I don't know where to go on this at all. I honestly don't. I'm going to say Carolina in 7, but I think that it's really. I wouldn't bet that in a heartbeat. Like honestly, this series is so hard because
betting it.
No, but I'm just saying this is
luck when you run into Bill Zito again, telling him you picked against his team. That's good.
He'll probably want me to keep picking against his team because I picked against his team twice. and they've won.
Yeah. Look at how the Toronto
the way hockey people are. He's probably thrilled that I pick against his team. I didn't tell him what I was picking on this thing at all. But
look at how good the Toronto picks ended up.
I will say this: I heard his press conference. I think it was, and he said we could sweep them in 4, they could sweep us in 4. That's where the series is at in his head. So he's telling you basically the same kind of thing. Like, there is also kind of a cool thing about the fact that these are different divisions, like because both these teams have played within their divisions. So I do like the concept of Florida and Carolina.
I hate the divisional set.
I know you hate the divisional setup, but there's something cool about it now because Tampa and Boston are very much the same kind of team in that kind of division. They've been built to beat each other. New Jersey and the Rangers are the same kind of team. They've been built to beat each other.
And Toronto's been built to lose to either one of them.
but Carolina, but now you'll be upset when you play.
Mike, it's all going to change. They're going to usher in a new era soon.
Yeah. So, but Carolina and Florida, they're two teams that I do always put a lot of stock into who you play previously in the series, and I think that Carolina is more prepared to play Florida than Florida is to play Carolina.
Because I think Carolina's prepared to play everybody, but I don't think Carolina's prepared. Here's what I don't think they're prepared for. I don't think they're prepared if all of a sudden the games are really tight.
Yeah.
But tight in a way that it's like 4-3, where Carolina's going to have to come up with 4 goals to win a game, even in a tight. They used to playing tight games, but I don't know if they could score 4 goals a game. And they did it the last game against the Leafs. I get it, not the Leafs. Last round they did it last. Whoever they beat, it was like
New Jersey, right?
New Jersey. Thank you. I think it was 4-3 in that one. They had, but I think Jersey just broke down. But I think they are going to struggle to do that. And so now, I think the crux of the series is you're asking Freddie Anderson to keep the score down, or at least always have the lead. And he's not the best goalie, even with a lead.
Yeah. Are they tough enough to play against Florida?
Yeah.
Yes.
Florida's pretty physical.
No, but Brett Burns can help with that, and they have other guys like you said, Martinook. They could play that. They could play that. I just don't know if they could play offensive. And now look, it's not like the Leafs where Florida thinks they're going to just be the offensive juggernaut and roll over them. They know better. They do play a very tough game, but
and that's why I lean towards Carolina, because the reality is like when I look at Carolina and then taking out New Jersey and then taking out the Islanders, those are two teams that play a lot more like the Panthers than the Leafs and Bruins play like the Devils or Rangers, or Islanders. Like, to me, it's like the Leafs and Bruins are star-driven, big-time teams that have like this excellent talent up front, power plays are good, deadly, that kind of thing. I think the Carolina's I think Florida is a lot more like a Patrick Division teams, for less of a better word. Even though there's no Patrick Division anymore.
Hot pocket's ready.
What?
I heard a beep. I think your hot pocket is ready.
That's our dryer, our clothes are dryer.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. That's my thinking. So to me, I think this is Carolina in 7. I don't know. Like
we'll get Kevin's pick. Before
we'll get into the other one.
I mean, again, right now, after 6 games, Freddie Anderson has a .931 save percentage.
Yeah.
Bob only has a .918, but we all believe Bob is better.
Right.
That's the weird thing about this.
Bob played Toronto and Boston, and Freddie played the Islanders and the Devils. So that's like
Freddie's undefeated. He's actually 5-0 in the playoffs, but we're all waiting for that bad moment for him.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing of this. He's actually statistically better than Bob right now, but he hasn't played nearly as much though. He's only played he's only had to make 134 saves because Ronta played games, and Bob has had to make over 300 already.
Right, exactly. So there's no question that that's a big difference. I guess the last thing I want to talk about is tonight is when the voting ends by the GMs for the GM of the year, right? And that's another vote, that's coming up. And I wrote an article yesterday that I think this is a knockdown, obvious win for Bill Zito, in my opinion. Just because honestly, I think that when you look at what he's done, he's been general manager for 985 days of the Florida Panthers.
Well, let me ask: is the voting inclusive of the playoffs, or is the voting for regular
inclusive
season?
of the first 2 rounds? And that's what it always is.
I'm not taking anything away from.
No, please give me another one. Tell me. You can argue.
But Bill Zito, because of cap restrictions, really didn't make any adjustments after at the deadline.
But the deadline. But
they made the big trade. Obviously,
they made the big trade, and obviously that was a difference making move.
He got Cousins for like $1.2 million, which is pretty impressive.
And Nick Cousins has actually produced.
He's been way better
Nick Cousins, Mike.
Yeah, but you could say the move that Carolina did with Brent Burns was just as impactful.
Sure.
I think Jim Nill deserves some notice in Dallas.
Nill, Sweeney, Zito. Trying to think.
Kelly McCrimmon, gets Jonathan Quick at the deadline. Gets Barbashev with little cap space. I mean, you can make a case for all 4 of the GMs.
I could see McCrimmon being in there too. I think I like those 4. Like I could see those 4.
No, they're all 4. All 4 of them are very good. I just think that when you look at a team that's gone from, we always with the coach, we always go from the team that's gone from the furthest back to the furthest forward. In that period. And the GM of the year, I wrote about this yesterday. GM of the year is a ridiculous award because it's like, it should be the GM of the GM of the 2020s, like say, or whatever,
But the GM, okay.
Is that what you want, the GM of the decade now?
GMs are 5-year projects at least.
The GM of the year had the season ended and had the voting ended in the regular season. Obviously, would have been Don Sweeney.
Right.
And last year, obviously, would have been Bill Zito because
right. Oh yeah,
but, they get knocked out in the second round. Sweeney gets knocked out in the first round. This year. So, I think that 2 years ago when Zito's team made the playoffs finally and he didn't win a round, they lost to Tampa. He was one of the 3 finalists for GM of the year, but in his rookie year there. So last year, didn't get any mention at all, even though he was the President's Trophy. So to me, it's definitely an interesting thing, and definitely the playoffs are a factor because
I'm gonna lean towards McCrimmon though because they had to play 100 goalies this year.
Yeah, that's true.
They had to have all these goalies. They had to make moves for them. They had to keep rotating them in and out. I don't even know how they're there, honestly. And they had injuries too.
No, their goalies their goalie situation has been absolutely nuts. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
That's the only reason I give them the edge. Otherwise, I like Zito. But
it wasn't that much different though in Florida. I mean, it was you had Spencer Knight, who was going to be their starter, is gone.
That's fair.
And Bobrovsky wasn't very good, so they end up going out and getting Lyon to save their season. And now they go back to Bob. But I mean, there's
it's close. It's really close.
It is close. I don't disagree. It's always pretty close. It's always one of those things you have to wonder. The difference. There's $8 million, almost $8 million of dead cap space that Zito can't touch, right? And then there's another. And then there's Bob's contract. You're going to put that's $10.2 million. So you're looking at $20 million that he couldn't work with, right? So you're sitting back and saying that even if and Bob's been
some of that is his own doing though. Let's not act like the cap space.
Not much of it. I mean, the players he's signed have been I wrote yesterday, doing research on this. Their big 4, which is say the big 4 he's brought in: Reinhart, Verhaeghe, what's his name?
Duclair,
Reinhart, Verhaeghe,
Gudis,
not Gudis. The 4 big forwards: Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Bennett, and Duclair. Those 4 players.
You didn't even flinch.
Those 4 players, that he's brought in, because there's only 3 players. Since he took over, there's only 3 players left, and that would be obvious: Ekblad, Barkov,
and Bobrovsky,
right? So hold on, I got to grab this.
Somebody asked where Ty Anderson is.
I apologize. 1 second.
He's in Boston eating junk food. Okay, keep moving.
And I'm not taking anything away from Zito's job. I think he's done an excellent job. I'm just saying, I think that you can make a case for any of the 4 general managers that advanced to the conference final. And like I said, the Brent Burns acquisition by Carolina was a game changer. I don't think we realized how much of a game changer it was.
It's a good one.
they were making the point on one of the shows I was listening to this morning. They spent the money that everybody thought that they were going to spend on keeping Tony DeAngelo, and instead got Brent Burns, and they didn't give up much for Brent Burns. So who would you rather have?
Yeah, well, here's one. I'm going to give credit to Patrick Williams and say this is where Jim Nill could actually win. Dallas is the only one that has every team in it still in the playoffs.
True.
For the NHL, AHL, and the ECHL. The GM has a lot to do with that.
That's very true. That's very true.
They're the only one.
We're looking at a lot of good GMs here, honestly.
I mean, that's what we're really looking at here.
It's not, and any one of them wins, no one's going to complain. No one's going to complain.
I'll tell Jim Nill to his face he's the best, but
I am a huge Jim Nill fan. Always have been. So
me too. I always interview him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Let's answer this before we end the show. We have to have our usual Maple Leafs update here. Right now, everything is in limbo. It sounds as if MLS&E wants to bring Dubas back, wants to give him an extension, and now Dubas, after what he said on Monday, and I was there, I was sitting literally 10 feet away from him and saw how emotional he got. There's some thought that right now there's a family issue going on. There's some thought that he might be burned out, that he was under immense pressure this year. And I don't think anybody would doubt that he was in terms of them, going into a final year of a contract and doing everything that he did to get that team as far as they did, which was by a round. I just think right now I would be stunned if Dubas is not back, but you have to say that the longer this goes on, I think the greater chance of it that it does not come back and it be of his own choice. And that's
taking a little bit. I'm not going to give. I want to say if it rolls into end of next week, I'd be worried. Right now, I think it takes time to get the board together to meet. I think
the board, the reports are from everybody that we respect, from CJ, from Elliot Friedman, from Pierre LeBrun, is that the board met. That the board, after the first round win against Tampa, said we're on board to giving. Apparently, it was Tannenbaum was for it, and Rogers was for, Bell was for it, and Rogers was against it. Rogers said, "Now we're good to go. We'll go with the extension." They offered it. And now it's basically in Dubas's court. Now, I don't know. Some cynical people think this is sort of a power play that he's trying to get more. I don't think it's that.
No, it's not about money for him.
Yeah, I don't think it's about money. I don't think it's about power. I don't think it's about control. I think it's about
but it could be, Jeffy Size there, even though he was wrong about Godzilla, could be right about Dubas not wanting to part with Keefe. We did talk about that at length, and that could still be a thing where he's thinking about that. Like maybe he does already know that Keefe is gone, and maybe he's still sort of rejecting the idea of going back with him not there. Like that's something that, I remember talking to you about it only because these are then you're dealing with human emotions, and then really anything can happen then.
Well, anything is possible. We don't have.
If Eck fired you from the show, Mike, I just want to let you know I would quit the show. I wouldn't, I would just.
There would be no show if it wasn't for me.
Right. So in solidarity.
All right, I'm listening. I'm just not here yet. 1 second.
I would quit the show immediately.
But that was good. No, but I honestly think that right now, it could be that's not a completely out of possibility, out of the realm possibility.
I mean, and maybe he's only saying, and this is something where maybe this is the way to get Dubas back. Maybe the board says, all right, you know what? We're going to let you bring Keefe back, but understand that there may be a point this year you're still going to have to fire him. And he may accept that.
Yeah. I mean, there's also and I know that Elliot said this on one of his radio spots, I think yesterday, is that, this caught MLS&E completely by surprise. And the fact that he is floated out there that, they can't wait very long, Russ. There's a window here, and it's not.
Yeah, there is.
Not until the end of next week. They've got a lot of business to do. And if it's, I would say if it goes past this weekend, I'd be then I think the percentage swings to him not being back. But it's going to be, I mean, it definitely is going to be, we're in uncharted territory right now is what.
Yeah. I mean, to answer the question, Mike would not quit if I was fired. I know that. It's okay.
But there's never a possibility that Russ would never do anything to get fired.
But no, this is, like I said, I could see this playing out till Monday. I want to hear something Monday or Tuesday by the Leafs. If I don't, then I am going to worry that maybe Dubas isn't going to be back. And Shanahan's hiding.
Shanahan is not going to talk until this is resolved.
Correct. He's hiding right now.
I don't know if he's hiding. I think
he is. I mean, he could have had his speech and he could have said, listen, I want Kyle back. But like you said, based on the fact that he isn't back,
right? But Russ
doesn't want to rub his bosses the wrong way, so he's not going to say anything.
If he comes out and he says on Monday and he talks to the media and says, I want Kyle back, and the MLS and the board says, no, we don't, then he looks impotent.
No, I get it. It's self-preservation, but I'm just saying he is hiding in a way. He is, because most GMs would have spoken already. Yeah. Not GMs, most presidents would have spoken already.
Yes. So yeah, okay. Will MLS and he fire Shanahan? No, I don't. He's got 2 years.
No.
He's got 2 years left in his contract. He's not getting fired.
I'm back.
Okay.
I apologize.
All right. So, well, you're back. So you can take over the show.
Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and without Mike and Russ, it's not a show at all. So hopefully neither of them leaves anytime soon. We'll talk to you later. No, wait.
Press the button.
Did Mike end the broadcast?